you want to get into Battle Falls now? Because this is when.
I think we might as well. That's probably good timing.
Because Battle Falls, Silas came to me after retention was such a big hit. He said, hey, we want to do more stops. This is like end of 2011. We want to do more stops. We're looking for places to have it. Do you want to do one? And I said, absolutely. And he's like, we'll give you like a little site fee, basically a couple grand to hold it at your house. And we'll provide everything else for the event, but you got to come up with the site. So you got to build it and, you know, do it on your dime. But then, you know, obviously we'll pay you a site fee to be a stop on the tour.
Yeah.
So I set out and decided to start doing something, put plans in place in the end of 2011, went and bought a Bobcat and got to it, learned a lot about excavation and digging ponds and, you know, doing all that stuff.
So is it just the site fee that you're kind of getting, or are there other sponsors that are saying, hey, you're going to do this project, we're down to help?
So it wasn't great. In my head, I heard that Ben Horan did his for 10 grand. He got his whole thing done for 10 grand, under 10 grand, and Nike footed the bill for him, which I was like, oh, that's sick. I'm going to talk to Ronix. I'm going to talk to Supra. I'm going to talk to Fox and get them all on board. And I'm going to do the same thing myself. And basically just not great with budgets or like, you know, figuring out how to do all that, how to price it all out. I like had the thought like I can do it a little cheaper than Ben because I'm going to buy my own Bobcat and he paid somebody else to dig it and I'm going to do it myself. So I'm going to be into this thing for like 4 or 5. I remember that initial thought when I first started digging Battle Falls. Of course, 65 grand later.
Oh my God.
I remember my dad like halfway through, he's like, how much money are you going to spend on this? I was like, I don't care anymore. I just want to do it. Like, I'm just doing this thing. But I got like a couple grand from Supra and a couple grand, like 2 grand from Supra and 2 grand from Ronix. And Fox actually didn't chip in. They paid Kilgus to do that video on Battle Falls, which was cool.
Yeah.
But they didn't give me any money for it. But like, you know, in the big scheme of things, like that wasn't, you know, big money anyways, 2 grand from the other guys. So it would have been nice, but whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Does that answer that question?
I mean, I think we talked about a little bit more about Battle Falls. Where does that 65K come from? Like what's going into it? If Ben could do it for 10, you thought you could do it for 5 or 6. Where's the 65 come from?
The problem is it started growing. So like I went and marked out the dimensions that I thought I was going to do it. I put 4 cones in the backyard and I just went and spread them out and I started digging there. And I knew like this thing was starting to come to shape. And I was like going to do it 2 feet deep. I was going to do it, you know, but just a liner in the top, liner in the bottom. That's what I'm thinking. I'm getting my 4,500 from because I'm like, I'm just going to spend a couple grand on liners and diesel. And, you know, this will be easy. But the more I dug, the bigger and better it got. And it kept changing as I was sitting there on the machine looking at it.
You mean the ideas in your head?
The ideas in my head. At first, it was going to be two separate gaps next to each other with like bi-level left and right, kind of like the Philippines, because I had just been back to the Philippines. Philippines has that. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. And then I'll just have like concrete ramps that I just wax. And then I'm like thinking, why would I want to hit that? Like I just come from California where I hit like a natural sloped ramp from a spillway, and it was awesome. So much fun. And I was like, it'd be so cool to incorporate that. So like that was when it started changing. And then I was like, if I'm going to hold events here, why would I want my left foot forward and right foot forward riders to be like not equally yoked, right? So like you got a bigger gap on the right and like it's just going to make it weird to judge. So I was like, it needs to be uniform. I need to do the exact same rails on both sides. I need to do, if I'm going to do a ramp, I got to do it right in the middle. And just to make it like a super good place to hold this Wakeskate Tour event. That was kind of like why it started to change. And then the introduction of the water ramp was where all the money went, right? Because it turned into, I was just going to do like grass, you know, and then build like something out of wood to like, okay, this is constant flowing water. It's got to be concrete. Okay, if it's going to be spilling all the time, it's got to be concrete all the way across. It's got to have like ledges on the side to hold the water in. Like it got a lot more elaborate. So I was like, okay, that bill now came to like 10 grand to get those stairs done. Okay, now we got dirt work, a little bit more than I thought it was going to be. Now we got like 20 grand into it. Then I'm like, okay, how much water do I need to do Battle Falls with? I have no idea. I'm like watching YouTube videos about fire trucks. Like how much water is a fire truck pushing out, which is about 2,000 gallons per minute. And I'm like, okay, but like that's like high pressure. Like how do I know that like I can ollie off that? Like I'm trying to figure this out. Like I literally have no idea. And I remember like praying about it and like literally being like, God, I don't know. I cannot figure this out for anything. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I just thought 3,000 gallons per minute. That's what I need. That's the pump that I need. And I'm just going to stick with that. So I'm going to do that. And then I built this void, right? Like it looks like a handicap ramp, Battle Falls ramp, in the concrete that is 6 inches deep by 6 feet wide. And then it as the water flows, it stays about 6 inches at the top, and then as it speeds up, it gets down to like an inch and a half down at the bottom because it's moving so fast. And I didn't know if that area was the right amount for 3,000 gallons per minute. It was just like, I don't know, that might work. You know, it seems like that would be hittable. It looks like a kicker. You know, it looks like I could ride up and do something off of it. And it wasn't until 2 days before the Wake Skate Tour when I fired that thing up for the first time and we watched it build and build and build. It takes about 15 minutes to where it's like at full capacity with the pump and that water flowing over. And it's literally like millimeters to the top. Sometimes if like the energy's flowing more, I don't know how it comes from the county or whatever, but it'll flow over the stairs or it'll be like a little bit low. So it's like literally right there. And like, I don't know, I just, you know, hit it, or, you know, God gave it to me, however you want to say it. But it's funny because I met somebody, there's actually a calculation for this. It's called a weird damn, like weird.
I was going to say there has to be
calculation for it. They do it to calculate spillways for like government projects and whatnot. And I met the Ronix rep, Adam McKay, his brother. That's what he does. That's all he does. He came and rode Battle Falls, and I kind of was like joking around talking about this story. And he goes, well, let me send you the numbers on it. I've got it on a computer. And he sent it to me, and it was like 2,998 is what it needed. And like I, you know, picked 3,000, which is kind of crazy to think about, like what to look back at it.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to make sense of all these numbers here. So you're saying 3,000 per hour, right? Or per minute?
3,000 gallons per minute.
Is that taking water from the bottom back up to the top?
Yep.
That's the calculation you're doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just recirculating basically.
So it's 3,000 gallons per minute flowing from the top to the bottom over that little 6 foot wide.
Yep.
Okay.
That's a big water pump. It's a 10-inch intake and 10-inch discharge, 480 three-phase.
Okay.
Yeah, 480 volts, three-phase.
So backing up to the initial plans of this, you say you jump in the Bobcat with or excavator with 4 cones and you're kind of digging it up. Is your initial plan to use a winch for this or to put a two tower system there?
I was definitely thinking winch.
Okay.
But like quickly as I was like developing, like thinking about the ramp, I was like, this can't be a winch. Like we're going back and forth. Like it can't, it has to be a system too. Yeah. And I was good friends with Pat Panakos. So I called him and he was like, absolutely, you can have one. Like you're on the team. Like if this is what you're doing, like we want to be behind it. So
okay. Well, that at least helps because those are what, 12 grand probably back then or 10 grand or something.
They were in the 30s.
They were 30s back then.
Yeah, they were 34.
I guess you're not getting a used one back then either.
Built Battle Falls.
So you could have been in 6 figures on this if you had.
Yeah, for sure.
But
that's what I tell people is if you're doing it yourself, you're probably going to look at 100 grand back then.
Oh, man. You could probably do it for a lot cheaper now, though, right? I mean,
yeah.
You think?
Yeah,
okay.
I think I could.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was like into it for 20 at that point, and then the pump itself was 10 with the plumbing. So now we're at 30, and then the electrical to do all of this was ridiculous.
You can't just plug it into the wall?
I wish I really thought that. I honestly didn't even think about it. I'm like, yeah, power. Just plug in the power and it just happens. Everything's 110. Even when they would tell me like, oh, it has to be 480. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know. Like it would just roll to the back of my mind and I'd be like, I got dirt work to do, you know? And then I like got into how you have to power it. And I had to have a 3-phase converter and a transformer, a step-up transformer to go from single wire 240 to 3-wire 240, and then it steps up from 3-wire 240 to 3-wire 480, which, yeah, you told me that back then, and I was like, I had no idea. Now I understand it pretty well.
Sweet, I got more dirt work. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about how close do you cut it when it comes to finishing this whole project to the kickoff date of the Wake Skate Tour, or the first stop there? Yeah,
it was about 2 weeks before the event. My dad sat me down and he said, "You need to tell those guys to cancel the event. There's no way this thing's going to be done. Like there needs to be like a contingency plan to go somewhere else." And I said, "I'm not making that phone call." And I remember like it was a fight because I was like, "I'm not making that phone call." And I walked out of the house. I was like, "I'm just going to get back on this Bobcat and get back to work."
At that 2 week point, where would you say you were at?
The 2 week point, I had water in the bottom pond. I think the top pond was I still was shaping it. And I didn't have all the concrete done yet. I definitely didn't have the concrete done yet. Because the first time I started the pump was 3 days before the event was supposed to start. So it was supposed to start, I think, practice was on Friday. So this would have been like on Tuesday that I started the pump for the first time and saw that it would work and saw that, you know, it was enough water and like, obviously like, you know, whew, that worked, sweet. But there was like some curtains on the side because the water was flowing out on the side of the stairs a lot whenever like you'd wake skate.
Okay.
Because it would just splash and it was eroding really bad on the side of the concrete. So like I had to call the concrete guy back and say, "Hey dude, can you just come form up some curbs, some like little, you know, like little flare outs so that it doesn't splash over." And so he did that. It was like, we were laying sod that day when he had his guys come out and put those little curtains on it. So like technically, like it was like literally the day of practice, we were still laying sod. So it wasn't done yet, like technically.
So are people showing up being like, "Reed, you gonna get this done, bud?" Or what's going on here?
Well, it was funny because like I ended up winning that one, and a couple people were like, "Well, of course you won it. It's yours. Like it's home court advantage." I'm like, I finished last week. What are you talking about?
Next year you can say that, but this
exactly.
year no.
Yeah, next year absolutely. This is the home court advantage.